And so many of my Jewish friends are so like, they're complex. Jewish people are super complex, the whole system it's really fun, like fun to joke around with a lot of my Jewish friends. If you think up a good joke, they like it.
Yeah. I have a theory about why that's true. Okay, so here's my theory about why Jews are the way they. Not all, but I mean, there's a variety always. But there are two things about Jewish history that actually, I think, gave Jews certain cultural tendencies. One is that our tradition is very book-centered, right? If you go into a church, you see an image of Jesus. You go into a synagogue, you see a Torah, you see a book. We don't have a perfect life in Judaism. We have a perfect book. That makes it different. So you have to know, like literacy.
Text-based.
Literacy was huge. And then the other thing is, when you have to wander from place to place to place, you have to start learning all sorts of different cultural cues or you won't make it. And so you have to be like intellectually agile, because if you're not, the host country is not going to have any use for you and they're not going to be able to use you.
Wow.
So both those things Jews learned, and that's why you have so many Jews in comedy and so many Jews in music and so many Jews in literature. And so they learned the cultural cues of wherever they had to wander, which is, good and bad. Good and bad.
Well, let's talk about anti-Semitism then.
Yeah.
If we can. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I talk about it all the time.
Oh, you do?
I do.
Yeah. Yeah, because we had an episode, what a fucking weird. Let's talk about anti-Semitism. Is that all right? Sometimes I'll be honest with you, you get scared to even say the word Jewish or to say like Israel, like you feel scared sometimes. Like you feel like, we had a podcast like Roseanne Barr was on, right? And she said, she made a sarcastic comment. She goes, yeah, and 6 million Jews didn't die in the Holocaust, right? It was obvious sarcasm, right? It was obvious, I think, if you and me listen.
Of course.
But YouTube, they banned us for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And they took our episode down because they said that we promoted
Holocaust denialism.
something like that, right? And so it kind of it affected me. I was like, well, shit, like she is Jewish. It was it made me kind of angry, not against Jewish people, but it made me angry that there was this like that felt like there was another parameter where you couldn't speak about things,
So look, anti-Semitism is it's called the oldest hatred. It's extremely difficult, and there are lots of factors why I think anti-Semitism exists. But at least a big part of it is because Judaism and Christianity, Christianity came from Judaism. And so
Judaism was first.
Judaism was first by a couple thousand years.
Oh, damn. Then they probably were then.
Yeah. And that's why Jesus was born Jewish. Saul.
Oh, he was Jewish.
Turned to Paul. Paul's original name was Saul.
Oh, really?
Yes. He was Jewish. What happened was the believers in Jesus were all Jews. The early disciples were all Jews. And the other Jews disagreed with them. And I don't know about you, but in my experience, family fights are sometimes the worst fights. Yeah. And this was a family fight. It was like they all knew each other. They all grew together. It was a very small community. They were all Jews together. And now they disagreed about this huge thing. It's like, the fight over the Thanksgiving dinner table between the Democrats and the Republicans. Unfortunately, the family fight got put into a book called the New Testament that lasts forever. And so for thousands of years, Christians would read this, not with a sense of, oh, that's my Jewish brother and I'm fighting him, but that's the person who killed and denied the God that I believe in. And that's a very powerful thing the history of Christian anti-Semitism is long and very ugly.
They've had a lot of beef.
And Christians and then Muslims have their own history of anti-Semitism, not from most of history as bad as Christian, but still. And when you put that together, and then Jews aren't allowed to own land in almost any land in medieval Europe. So what do you do if you don't own land? You become a moneylender. It's the only other job you can do. You can't farm the land. You can't grow. So Jews were money. Nobody likes a moneylender because then you owe them money. And Jews, every time people owed too much money, you know what they would do? They would kick the Jews out of the country. Then they don't owe money anymore. Oh. And so Jews got kicked from land to land to land to land. And because they lived in all these different lands, it became easy to develop conspiracies about them. That land, Spain, or not Spain, actually Spain kicked its Jews out in 1492, but let's say that land X or Y that we kicked the Jews out, now they're attacking us. It must be the Jews that did it. And it's always, always great to have someone to blame your own problems on.
Yeah, everybody wants an enemy. Everybody wants somebody to point the finger at.
So you put a lot of these things together and you get this enduring hatred and this very selective, like people don't go on the internet and say, you know what, Jonas Salk gave us the polio vaccine and Einstein gave us modern relativity and Freud gave us psychology and Proust gave us the greatest modern novel. No, they say Jeffrey Epstein gave us pedophilia. And you can do that with any group. The difference is, of course, people don't do it with any group. They don't look and say, okay, what white Anglo-Saxon Protestants have done terrible things. Let's make a huge chart of all of them and put it on the internet and say, you see, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants are terrible. No, but they do it with Jews.
Yeah, that's interesting, man.
That's one way of thinking about it.
I mean, it's unfortunate too.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah. No.
Sometimes I say weird. Sometimes it's like I'd never thought about it.
No, of course. Why? I mean, it's not like.
And I think some of maybe like I don't know if like I don't notice. I mean, I grew up in a place where was like racial division and stuff. We didn't have any Jewish folks. My mom dated a Jewish guy actually for a little bit named. And he would drive so far to get gas that was a little cheaper, but we just thought it was funny. And he got us tickets to like our first football game we ever went to. And, you know, nice guy. And he was black and Jewish. I didn't even know that you could do that.
Yes, you could.
And then...
well, that's the other thing is that Jews are white to the left, but they're not white to the right. It's weird. Like the Klan doesn't think of Jews as white. Right? But all those kids on campus were saying Jews are white colonialists. Well, if you go to Israel, more than 50% of the Jews in Israel are what are called Jews of color. Some from Ethiopia, the others from Arab lands.
Wow.
So
JOCs, baby.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, well, they got some beautiful Jewish ladies I've seen on the internet. Probably men, too. I haven't looked at them, but I believe that there are some.
We got to get you to Israel.
Yeah. Hey, look, dude. I could end up over there. A Jewish lady asked me to marry her one time, but she only gave me like 7 hours to decide. And I was like...
that's a little bit of a deadline there.
Oh, dude, I asked for more time, and she's like, I've had enough of you. I'm like, well, then this is too much.
I think that you probably made a wise decision. Anybody who gives you 7 hours to decide.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, this marriage wouldn't last. Yeah. Why do Jewish people have so much success? Is that a fair question to ask? You
Sure.
Like? Sure. Because a lot of my Jewish friends are successful. It's like, dude, the more places I go where it's like, I see like, oh, this is a Jewish business owner or a Jewish thinker, facilitator. You know, it's almost like, sometimes I think of them as like glue-ish, right? It's like, they're kind of the, like, they're just, they find ways to like create value, you know, like.
So what I would say to you, I think first of all, what I would go back to what I said before about there's a tradition of literacy and they had to learn the cultural codes. But remember that this is now. And yes, it's true that certain Jewish groups in the past have had, but there are, I mean, like if you think about the Jews of Eastern Europe, the ones who were killed by them, they were poor as dirt. I mean, they lived on farms. They like barely eked out a living.
I can't even imagine that.
But that's true. Even now, there's like, I think 10 to 12% of Jews live under the poverty line. They're always, but the people that you know, of course, are the people who are successful. And there are a disproportionate to our own proportion successful Jews. Like, I think it's like 20 to 22% of all the Nobel Prizes in the world have been won by Jews, even though we're 0.1% of the world.
Damn, dude.
Which is amazing.
Fucking pull it. Somebody's got to start a comeback or something.
But here's the question. In reaction to that, if you knew that about another group, would you automatically think well of them or think badly of them? The weird thing is that people look at that at Jews and they think badly of them. If I told you, for example, which is true, the highest ethnic or racial or religious earning group in America is, do you know?
Hold on, give me 30 seconds.
Okay.
The highest racial or ethnic earning group in America is, I would probably say Persians.
Nigerians.
No way, because of this email stuff?
Isn't that wild? No, not the, I'm talking about in America.
Oh, living here.
Living here. Nigerians. Wow. Which is amazing, and yet nobody says, oh, those damn Nigerians.
Yeah.
They take all our jobs. They do all these no. It's because there are these ancient prejudices that then people turn against the Jews. I would think if people, look, the people who took their money from Harvard and Penn and so on, their grandparents weren't wealthy.
Right.
These are people who made tremendous success and then turned around and turned philanthropic. And then people say, look at those dirty Jews.
Yeah.
And I think, what do you want? What do you want from us?
How
what do you want
win?
from the world?
What do you
right,
do?
exactly. Nobody looks at Bill Gates again and says dirty wasps.
Yeah.
They look at Mark Zuckerberg and say dirty Jew.
What does WASPs mean? White
American?
Anglo-Saxon
Protestant.
Oh, they do?
Yep.
WASPs, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to think about. I appreciate you talking about it with me too, because it's like I always just get afraid. Like sometimes I think in Hollywood, like there's just a lot of Jewish folks. It's been
Yep.
And I don't have any thoughts about it except that sometimes you like. So at that point, you build stereotype. You build like, you wonder like, oh, well, do they have something against me if I'm not having successes? Right. Or so I can see how some people's schools of thoughts are like in Hollywood.
Well, also we have a tendency to group groups together. So people will say this about the blacks and this about the Mexicans and this about the Jews and this about on and on about the Hicks, about the, it doesn't matter.
Hicks, gays,
right,
people
exactly.
with freckles, Irish, Jesus Christ.
I know.
What are they doing?
And so that's also something that everybody fights against. Some of it's
just normal.
Some of it is normal, but it's also, we know that it's not really, that it doesn't really work. Like, do some groups loosely have characteristics? Yes, but not enough that this group is good and this group is bad. And also those characteristics change. I know that this shocks people, but when Jews first came in the early 1900s, they didn't want to let them in for immigration because they had low IQs.
No way.
That was what they said. Because we don't realize how quickly cultural stereotypes change from one thing to another.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like because there's so many successful Jewish people in the U.S., it feels like that America kind of has become just like a LLC or something. Do you feel like that Israel like owns America now? Is that a crazy question?
Yeah, it is actually.
Okay.
There's never been a Jewish president. There's never been a Jewish vice president.
Have we ever tried? Have a Jewish president ever run? Did Bloomberg almost won? Was he Jewish or not?
Yeah, Bloomberg is Jewish. He
didn't really run that hard.
He ran as hard as he could, but the point is he didn't win. The majority of people who own wealth in America are not Jewish. If you look at the top 20 families, there are a number of Jews on them, but the majority aren't. So the idea, again,
maybe that's a stereotype?
It's not a stereotype. It's conspiracy thinking, which is actually more dangerous in some ways than a stereotype. No group runs America. You hear all the time that like this group does or that group does or those kinds of conspiracies.
I asked you.
No. I actually am really glad you asked. I think it's really important. I think it's really important. Conspiracy theories are almost always based on some previous prejudice that people have.
Or would you even say in the beginning, what was the first thing we said? We've almost gone full circle here. Conspiracy theories are based sometimes on...
Conspiracy theories are a desire to do two things. One is to explain a world that's inexplicable. Why did these things happen? I know there are complex causes, but I'd like a simple one.
Right.
And the other thing is it relieves you of any responsibility. Everything that's bad that happens, it's those other people that are doing it.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, I've been a rabbi now for decades. I know many of the most successful and powerful Jews in the world. Some of them I know very well. They haven't let me in on the conspiracy, and I would love to know.
Okay, no, that's cool to know because sometimes you like, you just I think sometimes some of that's Hollywood shit. It's like you just feel like that since so many people are Jewish, sometimes you feel like they all kind of work together, and that if you're not Jewish, sometimes you feel like they don't care or that you're an outsider, and some of that could be your own thinking.
It could be, and and there certainly is a function that every group works that way. But if you go to most of America,
go to a farm and it's a lot of farmers and it's a lot of like Baptist farmers, they're gonna same type of behaviors.
Also, you see Jews. You see Jews if you go to L.A., New York, Chicago, Miami.
Yeah,
but like growing up in Louisiana.
Yeah, we had maybe two Jewish people. Maybe.
Yeah.
and one guy, I don't even think he was. Somebody just wrote Jewish person on his back or whatever.
So, it's
cool.
But I think it's great, actually. It's much better to ask even the really difficult questions, the questions that might be offensive, and let somebody answer them than to leave them unasked, because then, you think, he had no answer for that one. That's why he didn't say that.
Yeah.
I think
I
it's
don't
great.
ever think like that. I think like, okay, what am I maybe a little bit scared to ask right now?
Yeah.
Or what it was like.
Well, that's the other thing I was going to say is when you talked about how it's hard sometimes to talk about Jews, it's like every group is so sensitive now, so sensitive.
Yeah.
That
you used to be able to make fun of like
I
things.
know.
I think it's coming back a little bit.
Listen, Don Rickles. I don't know if you remember. He was a member of my he was a member of my congregation, and
No
he
way.
was.
You saw him there?
Oh yeah, he was merciless. First time he met me. Okay, I'm the rabbi. First time he met me, I was young. Obviously, the first time he met me. I've never, and I'm introduced Don Rickles. I'm like very intimidated. He looks at me for a second. He goes, "Don't worry, your skin will clear up." That was the first thing. The first thing.
Just an
yeah,
arrow.
right. And of course I cracked up.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's a shame that people can't.
I think we're getting back to it. I think a lot of it has just been just fucking some of society sir, just like of like I don't know. We got into this crazy stuff in the media. Things used to be able to be funnier. Now live comedy, I think, is still very good. I think it's the stuff that you know
that one person can object to and put on social media, or two people. I mean, obviously there are things you can say that are truly objectionable. It's not. I'm a rabbi. I take things seriously. But you have to be able to laugh at yourself. You really do.
Yeah.
If you can't, then you'll just find that other people do it for you.
And when it comes to like different, it's like in the end, your thought always has to be when it comes to different groups, whether it's Jewish people, black people, illiterate people, Chinese or whatever, women, men, we all have to live together in the world, right? And so it's like I think when I was younger, I was probably maybe like a little more dumb about stuff or whatever.
We all were.
Dumb, but yeah.
We all were.
Right. But then as you get older, you're like, well, the only way it either goes left or it goes like straight. It kind of conjoins more, you know?
Yeah, the world is a boat.
Yeah.
And you can't drill a hole only under your seat. If it goes down for everybody. Yeah.
That's interesting. And that kind of keeps us all it should keep us all making sure that our neighbor has a life vest in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Nice.
Because that's really important. If it goes down for one of us, it can go down for all of us.
Yeah.